Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast, the space for entrepreneurs on a quest for unwavering certainty and purpose. I'm your host, Lauren, and each episode is a compass guiding you through authentic conversations, unraveling the mysteries of your human design chart, and offering tools from the remarkable guest. Join me as we embark on a journey to manifest greatness and create a life aligned with our deepest purpose. This is the space where misfits find their enlightenment. Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I am your host, Lauren, and in today's episode, I have Chris. He is an acceptance coach. Welcome, Chris. I'm so happy to have you with us this afternoon.
Lauren, thanks for having me on your podcast today. I'm really glad we get the chance to connect.
Yes, of course. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your story and journey so far.
Definitely. So my name is Chris and I'm an acceptance coach. And what I do is I help people heal through grief, loss, and trauma to rediscover their self-acceptance and create a new inspiring future on their new path forward. And how I got started on that journey is I watched my grandfather take his last breath in 2020. I held him as he went through that moment, and I lost my first son to stillbirth 2 years after that. And that loss really weighed very heavily on me. It's something I'm still working through in my own personal life, but it was through that loss that I got into this place of saying there's got to be meaning and purpose to these experiences in my life because the feelings and emotions around them were very, very heavy. And what I came to find as I went through my own grief journey is that people didn't hold space for me very well. I got told life happens and this is a normal part of life. You just got to move on and let go and get over it. And my body and my brain just did not want to get there, is what I came to find. And so after joining groups on Facebook and getting in there myself as a coach, I started realizing how much we don't hold space for people that go through grief and trauma and loss. And we expect them to get over it at a certain point, an expiration date, if you will. And what I came to find through my own coaching is that I have a very beautiful gift of holding space for people. And I've had people come on my own podcast that I started, the Empower Grief Journey podcast, 98 episodes recorded as of this week. And not a single one of those guests that I've interviewed has gotten over it or let go of it. But what they have done is created something beautiful in their life. And they become coaches, authors, speakers, working in their communities, raising awareness for the loss they went through. And so I started to see that grief is something to be empowered by and not something that's wrong with us or something that's broken or needs to be fixed, but it's something that's a very beautiful gift. And when it presents itself in that way to us, when we're ready to hear it as we're going through healing, we have a beautiful gift to give back to the world. So that's a little bit about my backstory.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to talk about when you say that people didn't hold space for you, especially for your stillbirth. And I feel like that especially is not talked about a lot. I feel like in general, like grief is like you're either at this place that you're constantly reliving what you went through versus like living through it, moving through it, feeling it, and then like kind of just remembering it, like and having it part of your journey. And I feel like for me, I've never experienced your side of it, but I've experienced, the healthcare perspective on it and caring for, and I've said this when I worked in healthcare because I was a high risk OB ultrasound tech. And I told the doctors, our partners, that when people lose a baby or it's us that find the heartbeat that's not there or whatever. Like, you guys don't give support to them. Like, why is that? And I feel like, at least for the practice I work in Delaware, when I used to work there in Delaware, it was taken more seriously when they had genetic counseling, they had some emotional support, they had things for the family. And I feel like that maybe they have more. I don't know what they had for you guys, but I feel like you need that because if it's a mom or dad that go every week for ultrasounds and then they know what the heartbeat sounds like and they don't see it, I know in our practice, we were allowed to say, I have to go get the doctor. Or I would usually just call the doctor from my cell phone because I've always had my cell phone, just because then you leave the room and it's just like you're in this room by yourself with like, what's next, So I used to always call the doctor, like, hey, I need you to come in my room. There's no heartbeat. So you can go forward. It's like a lot of ultrasound techs I've noticed, newer ones would be like, I'll be right back. I'm like, you can't do that. I felt like I was a very big advocate for that because I feel like it's not talked about. So thank you for being one to, you know, raise awareness around that because it's, I feel like it's one of probably the hardest things besides losing a parent, you know, it's the top.
It It's definitely a hard loss, and I share, I'm empowered to share my son's story all the time
Yeah.
because there's over 120,000 stillbirths in the U.S. every year. That's 120,000 babies that don't get to see the world. And
Yeah.
for women in particular, you guys are the ones that get to carry this child from the minute it's conceptualized
Yep.
all the way through birth. And so, it's not just a clump of cells, it's a life, it's a baby, it's a child, it's a
Yeah.
part of your family, it's a part of your biology. And so, I will share we were very, very lucky in our circumstance because I've talked to women that have not gotten very good healthcare treatment, like you brought up.
Yeah.
And I will share the following that a little bit of Caden's story for you guys. When we did find out the heart stopped in the hospital,
Mm.
my wife went into complete shock, and I've never seen my wife in that level of panic before. And that was very, very hard for me dealing with that thing. Also, on the same time, realizing my son had just died.
Right.
Um, and not really, we did not have family support around us at that time. Our My in-laws were very verbally and emotionally abusive towards my wife and I the whole time we were pregnant, and that created a whole catalyst of problems. So it was a very isolating and a very terrifying moment for my wife and I because we had to deal with that on our own. And nobody gives you a guidebook or a playbook to say when your child dies, here's how to go through it. Nobody does
Right.
that. And so what I will say though is there was a nurse named Chandler. I love this woman a lot. She's the one that told us his heart stopped, and she said something very soft and very understanding in that moment. But my wife was in just straight panic, and I was just my brain had zapped out into numbness. But what I'll share was really powerful is that same nurse that told us his heart stopped came back the night he was born. The next day, she came back, and I don't know how she found us. I don't know how she knew we were in the hospital. But she came back and she said, I really felt called to check on you guys. I felt called to come here and see how you're doing. And she came in the room after he was born and she said, Caden's just absolutely beautiful. She said, you have a beautiful son, regardless of the situation. And when we left the hospital without him, she was there. Chandler held Caden in a very loving, very compassionate, very empathetic way when we left the hospital. And that was a very hard moment for us, obviously. But to know that this nurse that was there from when this all started to say his heart stopped beating to when we had to say goodbye, I could not be more blessed to have somebody like that cross our path in that specific moment. And I do, in a lot of regards, I do feel like she was an angel sent from God because I don't have any other way to describe how
Yeah.
much it meant to us to have that person there.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'll definitely connect you with one of the girls that I had a girl on the podcast and she actually was a nurse that cared for babies, but now actually can connect to baby souls. And I think you'll be really good, maybe if it aligns with you and your wife, to connect with her to see the spiritual meaning of all of this, unless you've already done that. So I'll make sure I connect you guys. But listening to this nurse, it seems like this is exactly what this nurse used to do. Now she doesn't do it. She's not in the healthcare setting, but she still does it as her business. And I think I'm like, wow, that's amazing because there is a reason, even though at the moment you have to process the trauma, right? But there's a reason why. And I feel like that in itself of just understanding the reason why spiritually, it can make a lot of sense and it can actually, give you a lot of clarity. So I just felt like I
Yeah,
did that for whatever reason.
no, I'd be very happy to
Yeah,
to connect with your friend that can
yeah,
do that. I
of course.
I did my first medium reading last month with one of my podcast guests who's a medium, and
Oh,
um, I
awesome.
I I had to laugh because my son came through in ways that were just very powerful, and I never told this medium anything about my she called up family members that I didn't even tell her about and said very specific details about them, and I went, wow, that's eye-opening in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
But one of the things that came through when she connected with Caden is he said, "I'm fine, I'm okay, but I came to give you a bigger purpose in life, is why I came the way I did."
yeah,
And
yeah.
uh, he was going to have major, major heart problems if he was born, and he likely would have died from surgery doing those things. And so
Right.
he just said, I didn't want to put you guys through the pain of that. and that's why he chose to pass on early.
Yeah.
The other thing that he said though is that I came in your life to shake things up because things were not working for you in a lot of ways. And
Right.
you needed something very massive, very powerful, and very big to shake your world up. And that's exactly, by the way, what happened after we left the hospital is, people that were not a good fit in my life for many reasons, or people that didn't hold space for me, things like that.
Yeah.
They all disappeared. Even job opportunities, stuff like that, all fell to the wayside. And where I'm at now, creating my podcast, and I'm writing a book, an anthology book. Um, he put me on this purpose to show people that grief is not this big negative, throw it under the carpet thing like we all treat it as. It's actually a big opportunity and a big gift to step
Yeah.
away from who we were into who we're becoming. And one of the most powerful things in my medium reading and I thought was really funny as I was talking to the medium Becky about this anthology I'm writing. I said, I'd really love to write, sell 100,000 copies of this book. I really would love to help on that scale. And she said she kind of like looked up off away from the screen for a second, really weirdly, and she said, "Just so you know, Caden just said, think bigger, Dad. Like you need to sell 1 million." And so like when I got that kind of thing, I said, yeah, you know what? He's right. I need to stop playing small in my life and I need to play big because playing small wasn't working. And so it was just really nice to hear my son come through in that capacity saying, keep going bigger than better than you are now because you are meant for more and you have a lot of purpose in my story.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I was going to say, yeah, that's pretty much, and I'm glad you had that um, mediumship reading because I feel like that, like people like listening too. I know that there's so many people I personally in my own life, and I know that like some of my clients that are going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, I'm going to buy his book, because I mean, even I will too, because I mean, I'll be vulnerable and honest that acceptance has been probably the hardest thing or the hardest lesson, one of the hardest lessons in my life that I had to learn. And I feel like society teaches, because I would love to hear about your process and how you kind of move like clients through, because I know that society is like, just accept it. Like the biggest thing that I think is the biggest trigger, and I've seen this on somebody's podcast or somebody's post. She was vulnerable and she was crying. This was in a private, group. I mean, it was like thousands of people in this group. And she said, I don't want shame or pity. I just want to let you know that I'm in a messy middle. And she was crying, being vulnerable. And she said, I don't want to hear you'll get over this. You'll like, it'll get better. Cause like, I feel like those is like a normal society norm that it's like you got this, like what the fuck do you mean like that? Even
Mhm.
just reading it, I'm like, God, I'm so triggered for her because like stop doing that, like that's not okay. And I just feel like to talk, I'm on this podcast, I feel like I talk so much about what people don't talk about, and but people resonate with it and they're like, I really wish more people would talk about that. So kind of like what's your process on how you kind of walk people through um, to not to actually feel the grief versus just letting it kind of float on bypass it.
Well, the thing about grief is that we all feel it and we all have it within us. We just
Right.
don't allow ourselves to access it. That's the part. And that accessing part is
Yeah.
to acceptance, what you're talking about. Now, when I coach people through grief, they've been told all those things I have. Like after I lost my child, within 1 month after losing my kid, I heard things like, well, at least we know you make beautiful babies. And I was like, thanks, that's really helpful. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to scream at somebody for saying that. I also heard, don't stress, you'll have another one. And I was like, I could
Like
have
this.
10 kids. It's not going to replace the one I lost. Like,
Right.
get,
Yeah.
like what,
Right.
now, pardon my French, what the fuck are you thinking saying that? Like, that's what comes in
You're
my
the best
head.
here.
Um, so like, there's this idea of like, well, at least this, or oh, you can have another, or like, oh, well, life. The favorite one people say is, oh, it gets easier, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. And so, the reason I come to this place of acceptance is the following: is that we deny ourselves reality when we make excuses like that in our life. When we just say like, oh, it's part of life, or oh, we got to move on, or get over it, or let go, we're giving ourselves excuses. But we're emotional beings. We're humans. We have feelings. I will share with everybody listening to this podcast, because I know every single one of you has done this, by the way. If you've ever driven your car down the street and somebody cut you off or drove too slow or did something weird or whatever, and you got pissed, you got an emotion, man. You got an emotion of some kind, whatever it was. Or
Yeah.
maybe you saw people flying flags or doing something on the side of the freeway and you got excited. Like, yeah, I'm in support of that. We're emotional people. I'm using those examples so people can relate to this. You have emotions. Now, in life, you've been told not to feel in certain ways, or you've been told to get over it in certain ways. What that does suppresses things down, but it's going to come out some way or some form because you'll get triggered by something in your environment. So, acceptance is our ability to stop denying reality. And that is much easier said than done. I want to preface that because it took me 2 years to really get in a place of acceptance with that fact that my son's not here. It took me a long time to get there. And this is where I say some people will do it sooner, some people will do it early, later. It really just depends on how you grieve. But the best way to get to acceptance, by the way, is to feel your grief. Feel how you feel. You've got to feel to heal. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so when I coach people, some people tell me, oh, that's really heavy, the things you get told. I don't take it on, but I need that person to get it out because I need them to see it. And I need them to say, I feel safe to feel. Because what happens is a lot of times in my coaching calls, after 50 minutes of somebody talking and going through their grief, sharing their experiences, their thoughts, their beliefs, their emotions, sometimes I hear this thing of like, "Oh, I'm sorry I dumped all that on you." And I go, "Don't apologize right now because I don't want to hear that." What I care about is that you actually got all that out so that you can see it, you can hear it, and you can understand it. Because you've
Right.
got to meet yourself in that place to say, "I accept myself fully for who I am." I tell every single one of my coaching clients the following: You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to be fixed. You also do not need to be told what to do. My job is here to help you see things by pointing out what you're sharing with me and also offer you questions or solutions or possible outcomes so that you can pick and decide which one of those things aligns best with you because we're all different. And so, in my podcast, for example, the reason I do that is because grief, there's no 12-step guide like Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no 12-step guide.
Right.
You can't grieve the way I grieve. Sorry to tell you that. I could tell you my whole grief journey today if I wanted to, but you're not going to grieve the way I grieve. And so I care about you understanding from an individual perspective what your journey is, your empowered grief journey. Like, what does that look like for you? What does that feel like to you? I care about that because if I can get you there and away from the stuff society says, I
Right.
guarantee you, by the way, you will heal faster, but you will heal in the way that you need to heal. And that's where you'll find your gifts, your lessons, and your blessings.
I love that. Love, love, love that. Now, when I was listening to you talk, and I know that a lot of people will probably have the same question, is because people shy away from trauma, grief, loss, and what was kind of your turning point? Did you have your business and podcast before you left the hospital? Or like what was your turning point and when you decided to face your own grief and create the empowered grief journey?
So, believe it or not, this has all happened in the last 9 months, to be very
Oh
honest with you
wow.
guys. This has all
Oh
happened in the last 9 months.
wow. Okay.
I've gone through a lot of trauma, a lot of stuff I can't share on my podcast today, but I'll just say that in
Yeah.
November of last year, I hit a place where I had come to reality that my grief with Caden was much, much bigger than me. And that's a big statement to make, but it was much, much bigger than me. And I got to a place where I said, I've been in depression for 2 years. This hurts a lot. I'm having a real hard time moving through this thing, but I said there's got to be something meaningful and powerful here. And about a month or two after we lost Caden, by the way, I remember telling my wife one night when we were crying and upset and sharing our grief, and I said,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but everything great that's going to happen next all starts with him. I don't know why that is, but something spiritually came in my head and said that's what
Yeah.
it's going to be. Now, fast forward to 9 months ago, I got told to go on podcasts and tell my story. And I was really nervous to talk about stillbirth because it made everybody around me very uncomfortable to talk about it. And that meant I was suppressing his story, suppressing my grief, not talking about it, putting a mask on, acting like I'm fine, but I'm not. Um, and so I got on podcasts, and the total opposite thing happened. I had people actually support me. I had people listen to me. I had people say, that is powerful, man. Like, how can you have that perspective? Or how can you have survived like that after going through a loss of that nature? And so back in January this year, one of my podcast hosts said, you need to start your own podcast. She said, you talk about grief in such an empowering way. And She came up actually with the Empower Grief Journey. She brought that up in one of my podcasts I did. And it
Oh,
just like it just clicked. I don't even know what happened. I just said, that's something. And so I went into Facebook groups and said, hey, I'm starting this podcast, looking for people to share their grief stories and their loss stories, trauma. I got 75 comments on a post. I had my inbox blown up. I had podcasts booked out for 3 months. And I sat there and went, holy crap, like, this is incredible. And I said, this is really awesome. Like, I'm really excited about this opportunity. But what I didn't actually take time to look at until I recorded about 50 episodes, and this is when I realized this, is that we all have been hiding our grief. We have all been hiding how we feel. We have not dealt with our grief very well. And we're also, by the way, missing opportunities and gifts, lessons, and blessings through that grief. And so I sat there and said for a second, 75 comments on a freaking post about grief. I said, holy shit. I said, there's that many people that are not feeling seen, not feeling heard, not feeling understood, wearing a mask every day and pretending like they're okay, but they're not. And then I also saw people, by the way, that not only were doing that, but they were out there in the world doing great things because of their grief. And I just sat there and had this big epiphany in my head and said, if this is the biggest response I got out of my grief journey, I am meant to do something way bigger than myself. And that's where this anthology took place that I'm writing, my coaching practice. I've got clients right now that I've been coaching in Canada and Australia, the US, even in the UK. I've met all these people through this process. And so, I share this to say that grief, simply put, is just not given space to be understood. And I somehow tapped into that thing by starting my podcast. And so I've laughed too because people say that I help them a lot. They have helped me heal in the same crossfire. So I always tell them what's nice about my coaching and what's nice about my podcast, it's not a one-way street. And I am not your guru. I am not your know-it-all. But to walk your journey with you, I'm very honored and I'm very humbled to do so. And I learn from you just like you learn from me. And I think that's where we come together in this grief journey. And what comes out of that is so much more bigger and powerful than either one of us individually.
yeah, I was going to say thank you for saying that, especially because on a larger scale, I feel like, yes, I feel like your mission, it feels to me like your mission is so much. I feel like it's like that for all of us heart centered entrepreneurs. I feel like you're very heart centered. I'm just going to say that. You don't need to call
Mhm.
yourself that, but I just feel like you're very heart centered when it comes to doing things in your business. And I feel like from like that standpoint, it is what's going to drive you to be successful. And I feel like a lot of people judge their grief. Like, sure, I have obviously I have grief like about around different things or whatever, but I feel like a lot of the world or society judges, oh, I didn't lose a child, I didn't lose a parent, I didn't lose this. I like grief could just be that you haven't healed from your high school sweetheart, or maybe you got broken up with, maybe you're abused, or like some trauma or like abuse or something like that. I feel like what I'm noticing in some aspects of this is when people don't have this big story that they've been hiding inside, I think that's probably where that comes from because they feel like they're judging their grief like it's not like somebody else's. Or I didn't lose a parent, like I said, or a child or whatever. And I'm like, to me, I'm like, you have a story, and then I start
Mhm.
listening to their stories and I'm like, I didn't have that experience. Like, so I don't, like it's like that's to me it seems very traumatic. So it's like, I feel like that's where it comes from society and it's like judgmental. And I feel like for me, it's like I really wish people would come together, like you said, and stop judging one another. We're all human. And I feel like once we are one, we all come from the same source. No matter what religion you believe or whatever you believe, we literally all come from the same. We come from a woman that comes from a different source. Like we all come from the same place. It's just we have different experiences. And I just feel like what you will do in society is I feel like you help people understand the true nature of grief. I mean, just I don't know you, but just
Mhm.
by the way you talk, that's what I feel like more people should understand. And I feel like that's probably what you help people with, obviously.
Well, Lauren, I want to build off of what you just said because it's actually very, very important that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Grief is not just about death and dying. And that's the biggest misconception people have. You know,
Yeah.
you can, the one that even doesn't get talked about much that I kind of laugh about inside, pet loss. Most people think, oh, it's just a dog. Oh, it's a cat. Oh, it's a rabbit.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the I mean, who says this shit? Like, I mean, here's my thing with that too, by the way. Have you ever watched a child lose a pet and just go, okay, well, lost my dog. Oh well, like I'll move on. No, you don't ever see that. What you see, by the way, is lots of tears, lots of sadness. I lost my friend. I lost
Yeah.
my pet for 10 years. I lost my cat at 18 years.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is that pets, for example, are with us for 10 to 20 years. That's a big chunk of your life. They were with you through some rough moments. You just don't process it because they're there every day. Pets are also very unconditional love, by the way. They're not like humans where they go, oh, well, you did something and you bothered me. No, pets are like, hey, I love you. You're part of my life.
Right.
The other parts of grief and loss that aren't talked about, job loss, relationship loss, divorce, like splitting
Yeah.
up, losing a house, losing a job, losing a family member. Like it's grief is everywhere. And so,
Yeah.
um, I try to tell people all the time, like losing a job can be very painful to some people. It really can, because if you've worked at the same job for, like one of my clients years ago, that I was working with, she lost a job of 20 years. That's really hard. That's really hard, man. That 20-year period, by the way, you were used to doing the same routine, and all of a sudden that got killed. Now you're going, how do I pick up the pieces? Like, what does this mean? Do I get to keep my house? Do I get to keep my car? Like, do I have to change my life? So grief comes in a lot of different avenues, and that's where I open up my podcast when people reach out to me and say, I don't know if this is a good fit, or I don't know if you talk about this. Dude, I talk about all grief and all capacity because like you brought up, Lauren, some people go through grief and they get into that comparison. That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Stop comparing your grief to everybody. Just stop it. I'm be the one to sit here and say it because I lost my child a certain way, but guess what? Those 120,000 other parents, by the way, that lost their children, they lost them in a different circumstance, a different way, a different means, a different hospital, a different nurse, a different state, a different country. They've all
Yeah.
lost things in a very different way. So you didn't lose everybody the way I lost Caden. You didn't walk my journey the way you walked yours. And so, because grief doesn't have a one size fits all box, why are we trying to shove grief in a one size fits all box? Why are we doing that? Maybe
Right.
if we listen to other lost parents or we listen to people in those other areas of grief, say, this is my story. This is how I navigated it. This is what I struggled with. This is how I found acceptance, for that matter. We can learn from that. We can take one or two things out of that, by the way. We might actually find our path. I mean, weird as that sounds, you might find your path. And that's where I just see so much value in everybody's story. And I don't ever compare or try to deny things or, not listen. I don't do that stuff like most people do because I've learned so much from people that have gone through, sexual assault. I've learned from people that have had one of their family members murdered. People have tried to commit suicide, people that lost multiple family members. My client right now, she lost her mom, dad, and uncle all in a matter of 1 year.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
But I've learned a lot from those people. So
Yeah.
my big rambling statement here is the following: be open-minded and just
Yeah.
listen to other people. My grandfather had a saying, always keep your eyes open and your ears listening because you'll never know what opportunity comes your way. And in grief, that's a big one. So.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for, saying that too. Cause I feel like for me, it wasn't up until I guess my husband said something to me last year. So I've been divorced now. I mean, I'm remarried, obviously, but like my Lily's dad, which my first marriage. It's so crazy to say that I'm married twice. It's just so crazy to say it out loud. Um, but I guess it's been 5 years, 4 years, whatever, 4.5 years. It was like 3 years ago that Joey, my husband, had said to me, Lauren, I think you never grieved the loss of your, Lily's dad. At the time, we didn't have communication. Me and her dad just started kind of communicating, hopefully to get on a healthier co-parenting, whatever that looks like, for Lily's sake anyway. And I mean, I've tried for years. It's just things on his side, just kind of stop that from happening. Let me just put it that way. And so I was like, I guess I didn't. I thought I did. I thought I did the steps. I thought I'm the one that filed. I'm the one that kind of went through my own healing journey. But he said, don't you think it's hard to grieve somebody that's still here? And like when he said that, I was like, God, that is so true that I still have to quote unquote see every couple weeks to exchange. And then it's like to still repeating, obviously I have boundaries and all that stuff. But I feel like even then, me knowing all the stuff I know, I didn't realize that I don't think divorce is even talked about, like it should be. That's grief too, you're grieving somebody that's still here, or maybe that you still, maybe you're the lucky one, quote unquote lucky one, they say that you can get divorced and never have to see them again. But it's like the people that have kids with, and it's a lot of people. I know a lot of people that get divorced and they're multiple kid moms and, going through the same thing that I went through. And I think that part of that reason is because of society saying, oh, it's just a divorce, or it's just that, or it's just that, it's just that. So I appreciate you saying that, because I feel like for me, I don't think I did the right steps, or maybe I didn't have the awareness that I accepted the fact that I was the one that did something wrong. I couldn't fix him, and it was more of like, no, it's just we grew apart. It's literally simple. Like I tell myself this all the time. It's either we grow together, we grow apart. And that's with my friends now, I say, that's with family members, and that's okay. And that's kind of like how I accepted things. You have people accept things however they want to, but I feel like that and what you said is really enlightening, because I don't think I did my own, except like I didn't think I did my own grief journey for that. I feel like you have a grief journey for everything. It's not just it's like a
You
whole list
do
of things,
because
it's all different, like it's like, yes, you have, like when I asked that question about like your steps in your grief journey, like maybe that was probably worded wrong. It's more of like, how do you help your clients, I should say, like start with, because it's their grief journeys are going to be different. It's going to be one topic and it's like, oh, we got to go to this topic. Oh, it's childhood, or it's this, or it's that.
Mhm.
So thank you for
So
explaining that.
yeah, I mean, what you just brought up is really beautiful, by the way, because that's a part of grief people don't talk about is grieving somebody who's still living and still
Yeah,
in the area. And that can be, like a co-parenting situation that I've seen a lot. It can also be estrangement with family. That's another big one that comes up. Talked to somebody last week about that, and what I'll say about that, and I love that you brought up that you guys grew apart. I love that you have that perspective because I've watched a lot of people go through divorce that are very, very angry, very, very bitter, and very, very spiteful. And it's all about how can I screw this person? And I understand there's a lot of emotions, which I'm acknowledging, by the way. But that's your grief coming out. All that anger and frustrations, all the grief
yeah,
and your frustration. But what I like to share is that people come in our lives for a season, a reason, or a lesson. That's why they come in our life. And
yeah,
some people are going to be there for 20, 30 years and then the relationship fizzles. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, they're a bad person or you're a bad person or this is just, bullshit or whatever. It doesn't mean that. What it just means is that that came in your life for a period of time for a reason. And you got many blessings and lessons out of that. And you're never really going to forget it. You're going to grieve that relationship not being there. You're going to grieve that friendship that never carried forward. But when you can learn to say, like Lauren just said, which is a very powerful statement that's under listened to, by the way, we simply grew apart. We're just different people. And
yeah,
I think when you can get to that place, there's not so much emotional intensity behind things. And there's not, by the way, guilt and shame and blame and accusations and stuff like that. All that crap comes out of negativity land. What comes out of positivity land and where I call it empowerment is recognizing that you just grew apart. Things went different. My in-laws really were very emotionally and verbally abusive towards my wife and I. We haven't talked to them in 3 years. I'm very happy about that because I don't like that negative energy that goes on with them. Now, they're walking their own journey of life. We're not a good fit. I can say that now after working through a lot of grief and a lot of issues with that because I'm the kind of person that says, well, I can always see what can be if we all work together. I'm always, though, I see what can be if we take a certain path. But we all walk our paths differently in life. This is why I say grief is not something to be compared to or say you're going to walk this like somebody else. You're not. And so I had to learn in a lot of relationships that went sideways for me 3 years ago that we're walking different paths of life now. I'm walking a very different one that most people do not walk. And so I am going to be very lonely and isolated in that arena, and that's fine. But I also have to recognize that other people don't want to heal at the rate I want to heal things. They don't want to do it. And that's their path. It's their journey. It does not mean that they're wrong or bad or evil or any of that stuff that goes on, like I hear most people say. They're
Yeah.
walking their path for a reason. And on a very big spiritual way, I'll just say this, that we all walk our paths at different rates, different speeds, different perspective, different thoughts. And that's our journey to have. And one day, by the way, we'll wake up and say, hey, I wish I'd done something different, or now I recognize in that moment what that situation taught me. And that's where, like I said, grief becomes an empowerment tool. It's not a thing to weigh us down and hold us back. It's that thing that moves us forward. And
Yeah.
so I just wanted to share that perspective because it's been very powerful for a lot of people I've helped.
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah. Um, I feel like people listening, like me listening to this a couple years ago, like, when I had to kind of stop blaming, being in this victim mentality, I feel like you have to go through that stage. I mean, it's his fault. Everything else is my parents' fault. And then I realized basically the universe put me by myself. And it's like, you're going to stop blaming people pretty much. I mean, here nor that. And it was a spiritual awakening that I went through, many of them. And it was like, oh, I could see the bigger picture to things. And I just wanted to know, I think my question was, I want to know what his purpose was. And I seen the purpose, obviously. I wouldn't have Lily if it wasn't for this. I wouldn't have, if I wasn't, I mean, maybe I didn't have to get married, but whatever. Like I can't change my past. I can just accept it and kind of try to understand it. And for me, it was one of my first mentors about 5 years ago that told me you have to figure out. And I was like, well, how do I figure out what I can be grateful from this situation? So I'm writing all my I'm grateful for because, and I got to the point that I had to say I was grateful for, forgiveness and all that stuff, and I'm like, I'm not forgiving him. How do I forgive somebody? And she said, we're going to get there. But
Mm.
my question was here, I'm always questioning this. How can I just forgive myself and not him? And she said, you're only forgiving yourself for yourself. You're not forgiving him because he's never going to tell you he's sorry. Now there was an apology that he did say in his way of, I'm sorry for fucking your life up. And I was like, great, it's fine. I'm me at this point, I'm so emotionally disconnected from all of it that I'm like, sounds good. Like, I know it's not genuine, but it's a simple fact that he apologized and I acknowledged it, Does he know the extent of what I went through? No. And does he need to? No. He also doesn't need to know that either. So I appreciate you saying that because I feel like for me to get to a place or for anybody to get to that place, I feel like you're doing it for yourself. Because then my next question for you is about, can you talk a little bit about like self acceptance? So, like, trauma is often I guess it can like combine grief and like the healing journey and like in a lot of layers. Literally, I think I just explained. Like, I'm like, why am I explaining this? That's why. So, like, how can this help with your clients, like if they have a lot of trauma and beginning to rediscover their sense of safety and self acceptance? Like, what would that look like in your coaching program? Or do
So you hit on two big topics, and I just want to I want to build on both of them really quickly. About forgiveness. What you guys have been told about forgiveness growing up, throw it out the door right now. Chuck it out the door. I have two podcast episodes that you guys really need to hear about forgiveness if you ever get a chance and have time. Forgiveness is, you need to start here with forgiveness. Stop putting it out there. I mean, I'm saying this for a reason because I'm going to share really quickly. My in-laws bullied the crap out of me the whole time I was pregnant with my wife. They just chose to pick on me constantly, and it was always about getting their way and on their terms. And they did everything at all cost to get their way. Now, I got put in a place, by the way, when I refused to acknowledge those things and I stood my ground and stood up for stuff. I got told, well, you just need to forgive people because they don't know. You just need to forgive. And this family has a perpetual cycle of, well, let's just say we forgive things, but then we perpetuate the abuse and do it again. And then we'll say we'll forgive. And so there's this perpetual cycle of forgive and abuse, forgive and abuse. And that keeps people trapped in trauma. It keeps people trapped in loss, and it keeps people trapped in a very fight or flight defensive mode all the time. And what you also do, by the way, is you sacrifice yourself when you constantly forgive people that perpetuate abuse. And so what I got told all the time to forgive other people, and I kind of lost my edge on that when I lost my son. I said, no, I'm done with that. You don't get forgiveness when you can't even give me an apology, let alone acknowledge something. No, you don't deserve forgiveness. But then I thought about it for a minute and I said, I'm going to blame myself right now. I'm going to stop blaming the outside world and playing victim for a minute. I'm going to blame myself and I'm going to look right here. And I'm going to tell you guys that is the hardest damn thing I ever did when I went through healing from Caden. That was the hardest thing I did because I had to sit there and say the following. I allowed myself to be treated like this. I allowed other people to say things like this. I allowed myself to be put in situations that I knew were not healthy for me, that I didn't speak up, that I didn't say that that hurt my feelings or made me feel a certain way or crossed boundaries. I tolerated that. I allowed it. And when I got to that place, by the way, the anger came down. It came way down. And it came to this place of saying, Chris, I forgive you for not knowing how to set boundaries. I forgive you for tolerating and allowing that behavior and allowing other people to treat you that way. You didn't know any better. You did the best you could with the skills and knowledge you had at the time. You didn't know any better. But your son came along, by the way, in a very powerful way and said, that all stops today. That train cannot run anymore. Because if it continues, by the way, all those problems will continue to persist. And you will continue, by the way, to shrink yourself and never live up to your life that you deserve. And so I want to encourage you guys, forgive yourself. Start here. Stop looking out there, man. It's not going to work. Go here and forgive yourself. Get this thing fixed. Because when you do want to go out there, by the way, and forgive other people, that's when you can do it. Because it will not come from this place of guilt and shame or blame or I should do this because of whatever reason people tell you. It's going to come from your heart. And you're going to say, forgiveness means I have let go of resentment and anger I have towards that situation. I've let go of it, me. And I accept that person fully for who they are, right, wrong, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. I accept them. It doesn't mean, by the way, forgiveness does not mean access. Let's just get that clear. Forgiveness doesn't mean access. It just means that I accept you for who you are, but we're not a good match in life, and that's okay. I want you to walk your journey. I'm going to walk mine. That forgiveness of yourself gets you to there. Now, self acceptance, by the way, that's another topic I help my clients with. This means accepting yourself for fully who you are good, bad, right, wrong, and different. Accept yourself fully. I read a book by this guy, David Goggins. I listened to his podcast twice. He's an ultra marathon runner. David grew up in an abusive household. His dad beat the shit out of him and his mom, literally. And he went to school bruised up, sore. He got called the N word multiple times, almost got shot. What David talked about in his book, when he mentioned going off to SEAL training, he said the SEALs didn't really like him that much. And he said, I wasn't part of the brotherhood because I was a very different guy. I wasn't like everybody else. And he said, I've never forgotten this statement, but he said, I am very, very flawed. I am not perfect. And he said, you guys that throw me up here, I'm not that guy. I'm still 6-year-old David that stutters on stage when I try to give a motivational speech. I'm still David that gets shy and embarrassed on why somebody's giving me an award when I don't feel like I deserve it. And he said, I'm still that guy. Even though you guys throw me up here as Mr. Celebrity, badass marathon runner, I'm still this guy over here. And so he said, I'm very, very flawed. And he said, that makes me humble enough to admit my mistakes, admit who I am, accept that there's things I need to work on. And that relieves all this pressure we put on ourselves to be this person, put this mask on and pretend we're somebody we're not. So if I could encourage you guys with self acceptance, you all are flawed. I'm flawed, severely flawed. I will tell you guys that openly. But I know every day that I have an opportunity to change, to be different, to grow, to learn from people that I talk to, for learn from people I help. Put yourself in that place. You will learn so much about yourself. And when you can recognize you're flawed, by the way, you're going to give somebody else permission to come to the table and say, I'm flawed too. And now you guys can talk and walk at the same pace and grow together. Now, that's the beauty of self acceptance.
Yeah, I was going to say, I also want to say that it seems like I listened to his podcast on Joe Rogan, And when I was listening to him talk, I was like, wow, he has a huge like self-compassion like for himself, because especially when he's like, I feel like I don't deserve it. But I say that all the time. I'm like, even though I feel like I don't deserve it, I'm still going to accept it, because that's just that self-compassion piece. So you guys listening, go check that out, because I feel like that would give you a little backstory of what he just said.
It's a
So before
powerful
we
podcast that changed my life. I'll say
Yeah, and
that.
I'll make sure that your podcast link for people to check it out is also in I think you sent it over to me. So I'll make sure I put that in the description box as well. So before we wrap up, for the listeners maybe that are walking through grief right now, what are a few like grounding practices or mindset shifts or rituals that they can do to find hope through this connection? Obviously, reach out to you, but maybe if it's like in the moment.
If you guys are going through grief, loss, even trauma right now, my first one I want to share with you guys, find safe people. And when I say that, I mean find people that hold space for you, that do not say you need to get over it or let it go or, oh, it just happened. Those are not safe people. Find people like me that say, hey, I'm going to shut this thing that you're looking at right now and I'm just going to listen. I'm going to give you space to just talk and be exactly where you need to be right now. Find people that will do that for you. That's the biggest thing I could share. The other thing I want to recommend is journaling. Journaling is a great way to get what's up here out in front of your paper so you can process it. When you go through grief like I did, there's a lot of emotions flying around. You've got anger, you've got frustration, sadness, overwhelmed, numbness, you've got disbelief, you've got denying reality. All that stuff is flying around, and it can feel like you walked into a cobweb, is what it can feel like. Very kind of just like that. You're going like this kind of thing. Um, Journaling is very, very helpful. My other thing that I'll share with you guys, and I said it a little bit earlier in this podcast, but I really want you to listen to me when I say this. You are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. You are not a problem. There is nothing wrong with how you grieve. I want you guys to really, really listen to that and play it back, by the way, because that's the biggest thing I can encourage you, because you're going to have days where you're going to feel very overwhelmed by grief. Those emotions are going to be very high. You're going to feel kind of stuck or suffocated by them. I want you to hear that, play that back. You're not broken. You do not need to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with you. You are going through grief the way you need to grieve. And that process looks different for everybody. And I want you to feel comfortable in your own skin. Take the mask off, okay? We're not pretending now. I want you to sit with yourself and say, I accept where I am today. I accept that I'm feeling hurt. I accept that I'm ruminating over these thoughts. I accept that I don't know where to go forward from here. I accept that. And then what I want you guys to do is ask yourself powerful questions. What's causing me to feel this way today? Don't ask yourself why question. Don't say why am I feeling this way, or why can't I move on from grief, or why can't this be Don't say that shit. Don't. Say what's causing me to feel this way today. What's one thing I could do today to make myself feel 1% better? Or how can I help myself move through these emotions a little easier today? What support would help me out the most today? Ask yourself what and how questions, because I want to reframe this thing so that we can take your grief and get that sorted out in a way that you discover your gifts, your lessons, and your blessings. Because inside your story, inside your journey, inside your grief is a very beautiful gift. Just like my son Caden gave to me, every single one of you listen to this podcast has that same thing in you. And so I want to empower you to give yourself time and give yourself space to figure out what that is so you can go out in the world and help other people. Because I sure as hell can't do it by myself, nor do I want to.
Right.
But I want you to go find people that went through what you went through and are where you're at today and be able to say, hey, man, I walked that journey. I've been there. I'm here for you. I got your back. I want you to go out there and be those people in the world, because that's how we can change the world.
Yeah. I have to remind myself of those questions too, because I often feel like I do ask myself why versus like what can make me feel better. So that's a mental note for myself too. Thank you for that. Well, thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with somebody that you feel that would gain knowledge from listening. Make sure you check out the links. If you're watching this on YouTube, check them out in the description box. Or if you're listening to the audio, they'll be in the description box as well. So stay tuned for more captivating conversations in the future. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on another enlightening episode on the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you are a current or inspiring to be fempreneur, suffering from the fear of being seen and or feel very triggered when you're building your business, reach out to me at The Mermaid Light about my Rich and Resilient Biz Baddies. This is a collective text message Voxer support group designed to help you heal your triggers and turn imposter syndrome into bad bitch energy. If you resonate with our conversations and insight, don't forget to subscribe, rate the show, and leave a review. Your feedback fuels our mission. Remember, your journey to unwavering certainty and purpose is ongoing. So please make sure you stay connected with us on social media. Keep manifesting greatness in your life. Until next time, this is Lauren from the Enlightened Misfits podcast. Stay enlightened, stay inspired, and keep manifesting your extraordinary path.